if we're ready to get started, Jeff. Diana is online, so we do have a quorum because we only have Plan Commission today, no Board of Adjustment items.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to call to order the September 23rd, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Ford.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Brink.
Here.
Dargis Johnson. Here. And Boletsky, Ford, Dolly, Kays, Spire, and Hanson are absent. We do have 4 members here, so we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Third item on our agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that someone wishes to discuss, please let Brandy know, and there will be time at the end of the meeting for that. So just hand her something or let her know. But moving on, item 4 on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Can I get a motion and a second for the approval of the September 9th minutes?
Ford moves to approve.
Second, Culhane.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Since we only have 3 people here, I'll have to ask for a roll call vote.
Sounds good. Ford.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson. Yes.
All right, motion is approved. Item 5 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved, Culhane.
Second. Ford seconds.
All right, I have a motion and a couple of seconds. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Ford.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson. Yes.
Motion is approved. Moving on in the agenda, item 6, that's our regular agenda. 6A is commission consideration on resolution number 2021-46. It's a concept plan of Prairie Havens addition. Brandy, will you take over for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So as Jeff stated, we are looking at the concept plan for Prairie Haven addition today. If you guys recall, just recently we did annex and zone and also review a TIF plan for this area, which would be in the first phase. So it was 34.98 acres that we annexed and zoned. We brought it in this general vicinity. Let me go back to this agenda item to guide so you guys have a better idea. So maybe here. So you can see there with phase 1, so it will include these 2 streets and then the first row of lots there. So that's 35 acres, was annexed and zoned, brought in as agricultural district as just kind of a placeholder as we work through getting the concept plan approval before we would come back and do a rezone then, as long as the concept plan was approved on what they are proposing. And so getting into the zoning component, they are proposing basically, for the most part, R1c, which is a single-family compact residential district, which, if you guys recall, this would be the first subdivision that would be utilizing this zoning district that we created a couple years ago. So that's exciting that is proven to be able to be used, and hopefully we'll have some benefits and offer a different type of subdivision for just various options for buyers. They also have reserved an area down on the southeast corner of the development. You can see where they have it dashed with the green line there. They are reserving that it could be reworked to potentially be either C2 or R3. C2 is the local commercial district, or the R3 is the multifamily residential district. That just would potentially offer some opportunities for some neighborhood retail or commercial space. And then or R3, which is the multifamily, if they wanted to transition and do just various uses there with having the smaller lots, if it's an opportunity for some storage areas or apartments or townhomes. So that just kind of, there's options there. And then you can see, so the rest, everything else outside of this would be the R1c zoning, which once this is all done, there's 7 phases. It would be around 500 additional lots. And we did present this. The design review team approved what the plan has been, this plan that's been submitted. And we also brought this to the park board. where they approved the location of this park area, which is the 7.65 acres. That's in the southeast corner. Oh, I think before I said southwest, so sorry. The park is also in the southeast area. And what we did, we'll take it incrementally. So just as we phase it in, it'll go back to the park board for their approval. And so what we did this time is we actually accepted cash in lieu. So the park area will be reduced just slightly, like by an acre, for the amount of property that's within phase one. So we accepted the cash in lieu just because we have the recreational trail area, and there is no connectivity to the park at this time. So it's, for them to dedicate the park area, we weren't able to achieve that at this point. But we are reserving the area, and the park board does want to see a large park in that location. They think it's beneficial with the proximity to the recreational trail to have a little area for a park and potential trailhead. And then if you guys note here, I'll pull up this map, maybe. So this is what the park board looks at as far as proximity to other parks. And so you'll see that we like to keep neighborhood or community parks within a half-mile radius from each other. So we looked at that with the park board, and you can see that actually the entire area that phase one is in does have, is within good proximity to a park, which is that of Derby Downs. I don't know. I think I touched on everything. So with that, I will open it up for any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you, Brandy. That was a very detailed summary. When I first looked at this and I saw the smaller lots, I thought, are they doing a PUD? And then I saw that they were doing the R1c, and I was kind of excited to see that finally happen. I know we worked really hard to create those lots, with the idea of having some smaller ones. So seeing it on paper is, it's a cool thing. Mm-hmm. I will open up the public hearing if there is anyone in the audience or online that wishes to step up to the mic and speak either in favor or against this item. Please feel free to do so. Also, Brandy, looking at the plat, I see there's a few blocks that are adjacent to 4th Avenue. I know normally we try to not have double frontage streets, but I'm assuming that the city is going to allow that because we probably don't want to allow access onto 4th Avenue. Is that correct? That is correct. So 4th Avenue, and you can kind of see that with all of the streets around this quarter section, is they are all function as collector routes. So we do like to minimize access points, especially for individual driveways. So you will see that there will be the double frontage. Another constraint is because they are rural street sections at this point. So to have them accessing onto that street with the ditch section, it's just not as conducive. So they will have, I think when it comes to the plat, we would ask that there would be a no access restriction. So we wouldn't run into situations like we see on 3rd Avenue with Derby Downs. These lots are not supposed to have access. Like even with these lots here, they should have accessed the side street. So it's just all around for traffic flow of trying to reduce access points onto collector routes. And the city engineer and public works director, Heath Von Eye, is online if he wants to chime in at all to that point, if he has anything to add. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Brandy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead, Heath.
To Brandy's point, I don't know if my video is going to work very well here. Maybe I'll just go with the sound. But to Brandy's point, we do look at the regulations in regards to those double frontages. And the way the guidelines read right now is that we try to steer away from them, particularly those double frontages when you're adjacent to an arterial street. But also when you're looking at a collector street like this, we as long as we're prohibiting the access, that's the city's main goal on preventing numerous individual residential accesses onto those collectors or arterials. Now, could this be redesigned in a way that looks a lot different? Absolutely. There's a thousand ways you could design 35 acres of land and come up with 1,000 different ideas. That being said, I don't know if the applicant's in the room or if there's any further discussion or question about how they've laid this out. We could certainly defer to them as well. But that's the only comment I wanted to make was in regard to the regulation that we follow.
Good deal. Thank you, Heath.
Yeah, thank you. So around the perimeter of this development are major collectors, and then is there a minor collector through the middle? Is that First Avenue and 28th Street? Would those be our designated minor collectors routes? Is that?
You would have First Avenue,
Yeah.
and then this would be the 28. Is that 28?
Yeah, that's labeled
Yep.
28th on mine. I just kind of noting it as, development continues on, the west or the south, that we would probably try to keep that connectivity as well, so.
And they did line that up strategically when we reviewed it with the design review team, that we wanted to have at least one through street. And Derby Downs is very choppy, so there isn't, for these streets, they didn't line up all the way, but at least it's a small portion that it's not extending, miles to the north. It's not the collector route. And it is, Derby Downs is cut off on the north anyway, just because the city property is there and there's the topography issues. So we were comfortable with the alignment of retaining those minor collectors throughout, so.
Yeah, thank you. And the public hearing is open if there's anyone that wants to step up and.
Mr. Chairman, Heath here again. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Tell me.
Randy, with that alignment to those streets as they're tying into the existing, I don't know if it's something we maybe missed on the resubmittal, but we do want to double check those before we finalize any subsequent plans that they meet the offset spacing requirements. So take 27th Street, for example. Yeah, right there, that offset. The theory is there, you don't want a street to have such a minimal offset that it promotes an awkward, quick little swerve through an intersection to get through it, but an adequate offset. So it's a hard turn and then another hard turn to actually make that traffic movement safely. So if you follow 27th up, that'd be the one that'd be more concerning.
Yeah.
To the east, though.
Oh, okay.
The offset to the east. No, you're on the right connection, but go to the east now, to 27th. That offset there is pretty minimal.
Yeah.
That move.
And
Yep.
honestly, that's probably something that maybe we could even just look at removing them, because then it would filter everybody to the collector, and then they could access onto Third. But we can confirm that if the Plan Commission is comfortable with staff looking at that in regards to the engineering design standards, and then working with the applicant on getting that amended to make sure it's in conformance. Does that sound all right with you, Heath?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, and then, yeah, for the board too, if we just make that in the motion, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I did see someone in the crowd that had their hand up. If you wanted to approach the mic and state your name, you certainly can. And Diana had a question online too, I believe.
Sure, I can wait.
Yes. How does that work? And then we'll turn that on.
My name is Gary Kicker, and I live, I'm gonna get up and show you, or can I run this? I'm here on behalf of my mother-in-law, mostly, who lives right here, Bev Morrison. And my place is right here. I'm directly west of there. And when we built here, Darwin Brinkman actually, and I talked to Steve just briefly about this prior to the meeting, but there's 100, I wish I would have brought the paperwork, but there's 100 and some odd acres through here that drain between Scooters and my place and run through this box culvert right here. And then there's 130 some acres in this area that run through. And I'm telling you, we can see the creek. It runs through the sheep pasture, through the trees, and all these trees are dead because of the last flood. And it runs between, this is my food plot, and it runs right between here, and it goes down here, and it runs through that box culvert. I'm just concerned that there's enough retention. And I understand this one, and that's great placement. That's the right place. This one I'm not sure about. And then there's a line, you know, I live there, I drive by it every day. There's a line, this is the hill. So everything from here west is coming, and it's coming through here.
And if I,
And when that's all concrete, I just wonder, I mean, when the kids were little, they'd float things down in the spring through there. And I could run my 20-foot boat through there if there's, you know, I'm just concerned, and I'm just voicing that concern for us and my mother-in-law next door. And I know when we built, they were all worried that water goes through Spurls, and then it goes underneath 212, through that trailer court where Dakota Bodies is, and then it ends up in Pelican. And you guys are probably all aware of that. So, and I know there was issues and concerns then about us even building in there because the water runs through, and we're the lowest spot on 4th Avenue. So, it's just my 2 cents. It's just I'm concerned about where that water's gonna go and how much is coming.
so I can, Heath, unless you want to answer, I can provide some clarity of what we're looking at and what this map here that they present with the concept plan is, and then the city's requirements as far as when we get into the preliminary plan phase.
Randy, we also have Rod here that drew.
I live right next door to that, so I'm gonna.
He can understand on the water.
I'm a neighbor too, so I'm the designer.
So,
Hold on, so Rod will have, you can, so Heath, actually, Rod is here with Austin Engineering,
Okay.
so.
if I could touch on it briefly from a regulatory standpoint, just so everybody understands what we look at when we approve these plans. With the concept plan like this, we get a drainage report, and in that drainage report, the licensed engineer, which is Rod, who's in the room there, is required to do a hydraulic analysis. And what they look at is the current runoff and the amount of flow that's currently going through this undeveloped amount of land. And then they calculate the proposed runoff based on the imperviousness, all the asphalt and rooftops and curb and gutter that get installed, and how much that increases that runoff. And then what the developer is required to do is then detain all that additional runoff so that they're releasing only at the historic runoff rates. And they break the area down by basins, like this map here is showing that Brandy's pulled up. And they know where that water, what direction it's flowing in, and then they strategically place those detention ponds in areas so that they're in a catchment basin. They're in the low spots at the edges of the development so that it catches that runoff and detains it and holds it back. And the way they do that is they throttle it back by sizing the outlet structure a lot smaller so that it's releasing at that historic flow rate. But anyway, that's just a general summary that we do check that off, and that's part of the requirements for the development. But I'll let Rod speak to their design here if you'd like.
I really don't have anything to add.
Could I have you speak to the mic, because no one online can hear
I'm
you?
sorry. I know better. Yeah, I'm Rod Young. I'm the engineer on the project with Austin Engineering. I do have a vested interest in this. I actually live 2 houses down from him to the west, right there. And I've seen the water come through there, and I know what the water comes. I've also seen the water coming through the township road there right now. So I know what's going on there, as well as what comes down through Derby Downs, through that little bit of retention pond up there. And it goes down through that east ditch of the township road. And it gets pretty soggy here a couple years ago when we had all them rains. So I do have a vested interest as well, not only as an engineer, but as a landowner downstream. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. Let's see if they have any more questions for Rod.
Rod, are you comfortable with it?
What's that?
Are you comfortable with the drainage?
Pardon?
Are you comfortable with what you see?
Well, when we get into the design of the thing, that's when we really get,
Here, I'll let you can come up here and you guys.
Well, when it comes to drainage, I'm just
let's
gonna
do
chime
one.
in. When
Let's
it comes
do-
to drainage on developments, this conversation we have with every development, whether it was recently, when we approved developments north of 14th Avenue or this development or Eastwoods or any development, we do have to look at the water and where is it going. And I used to work for the city. I know the stormwater ordinance manual that they have is extensive because of that. So this isn't something we take lightly. And I see, there are 5 different catch basins in this project. So it's not just the acres going off there. There's also acres that go off to the south, and we're catching that water as well. There's even some that kind of goes off to the east a little bit, and we're catching that as well. So we do take the drainage very seriously on all of our projects, and we have a very extensive stormwater ordinance that catches that. I mean, does that mean it'll prevent all floods? No, it won't, but the existing doesn't prevent all floods either. But I just, from the engineering side, I know we put a lot of thought into where those go. I didn't mean to interrupt. If you would like to address it any differently, please do so.
So the question was asked if Rod was comfortable, and so Rod is the engineer that designed this, so hopefully he put a stamp on it, so.
I'll be comfortable with it when we get done, so.
Brandy, I have a question for you. Are these roads ever gonna go from rural width roads to street width?
Yeah, so we would look at that, at the time that we would get, they would have to be a larger project, and that's something that we deal with all the time. I mean, we noticed that when we had the CAX edition last time on how to deal with the ongoing maintenance requirements, and then at what point does the street get installed to city standards. So again, always unique situations. With this development at the time of platting, we'll have to work with adjacent, and phase 1 doesn't abut because both sides of 3rd Avenue are within city limits, and actually, yeah. So that won't be an issue with this phase, but when we get further to the west and start annexing and zoning and platting those phases, we will definitely work with township and county at that time.
Well, okay, so Gulfview Road, I assume we own quite a bit of that road right away?
Yep, so all of it that is adjacent to phase 1 is now annexed and zoned. So
Okay,
it's
so
a
then-
large right of way.
And then what about 4th Avenue on the south side? If that goes wider, would we not need to take some of their land in order to do that?
We, at the time of annexation and zoning, we would annex and zone to the center line of the section line right of way. And so you can see here where city limits is today. It ends at that radius there of Golf Course Road and 4th Avenue. So that would be something for the future when we're looking at annexing and zoning, that we would bring in half of the street at that time.
So that could potentially change the plan though at the south end of this, right? Or not? Along 4th Avenue there.
Potentially. And if it was something major that we had to bring the concept plan back, if there was a major revision, then we would do it at that time. But I mean, this, as far as phasing, like I said, there's 7 phases, and I don't know if they had a timeline included on here, but it'll be in the future, and we'll just keep a pulse on it to make sure that nothing is changing that would need to come back as a major revision to the Plan Commission.
So it will be during phases 4, 6, and 7 before we have any additional exits onto 4th Avenue. And then, we have other ones that go north into Derby Downs, a couple, 3. So I'm just saying, we're gonna get a lot of homes in there with one, everybody's gonna head to First Avenue South to get out of there.
Yeah, okay, I see your point
So,
there.
yeah, so my point, what I'm asking is, at some point, are we gonna widen Gulfview so that there's a turning lane there? Because, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of traffic with doubling the size of Derby Downs out there. At what point, I mean, is it just a traffic count that we take and we say, okay, this is the year, we gotta widen this road now with a turning lane and,
Yeah, and we have the master transportation plan that shows the traffic counts, and whenever it is warranted and whatever, in whichever phase we're in, we'll address it at that time. And if it would mean that we had to create, you know, sometimes there's just all different regulations as far as like fire access, secondary access, when you get so many dwelling units. So all of that are things that we'll take into account as we progress in this concept plan. But as far as like what we're looking at is like overall layout, and then as we come into phasing and the different platting and annexations and zonings that'll have to take place, those will all be addressed and reviewed again at that point, because remember, the concept plan is the overall master plan, and then each phase has a separate preliminary plan has to be submitted, and then that is reviewed by staff, and then that's where, if it's not conforming to the overall layout, then we would bring the concept plan back to the plan commission to look at that overall structure.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Heath.
if I could help address some of those questions from Commissioner Darius Johnson. The main point I would make is that, and that's a very good point to bring up. I'd want to make sure even at the concept plan phase, the developers securing and preserving adequate right-of-way. That's one thing I don't know is always checked off, Brandy, to make sure that those streets around this perimeter that we have adequate right-of-way with. Because you're right, Brandy, how you described that, the actual street design and all that would come into place. But the one thing we would want to do is make sure that we're accounting for adequate right-of-way width at a minimum.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the details would come into place with the preliminary plans later on.
Yeah, and we checked on that, Heath, and like for Golf Course Road, that one is actually we have 160 linear feet for the right of way there, so that one is, you know, larger than an arterial. And then as far as Third, we have the 66, and that would be the, and then as far as down here, you know, for our collectors, it's typically 80. So this location, I guess we can look at that further, but I don't think with our major street plan, I think this is a minor collector, so 66 would be adequate.
Yeah, that's what we need to check off, whether that's 66 or 80.
Can I add something here? This is Rod. I did take into account an additional 7 more feet on this development all the way around to make sure we had 40 foot.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds like we should be covered then, but that's, yeah. To the commissioner's point, that's a good point there. I wasn't sure if we had that checked off or not, if we preserved adequate right of way all the way around.
and so that also on the north end then too, or the north edge of Third Avenue? You did the same there?
I did there, on the north, on the west, and on the south.
Yep. So it is bounded by 2 major collectors, so that that's Golf Course Road, and then Third Avenue, and then, or no, 4th Avenue, sorry. And then on the west and north, those are minor collectors. So we will verify, and at the time of platting too, that we are reserving adequate right-of-way, and that is good to double check that. So thank you for bringing that up, Rhonda.
Thank you. Is there any other questions that the board members have to the developer as he's still sitting here? Hearing none, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on behalf or against this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and look for a motion and a second from the board. And I think that motion should include reviewing the street offsets as Heath previously mentioned for 27th and 30th Street, but I'm looking for a motion and a second.
Was there any other caveats or conditions?
Nope.
27th and 30th?
Yes.
I would make a motion to approve resolution number 2021-46, subject to the staff reviewing the street offsets for 27th and 30th Street West.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board members?
This is Ford. I had a question about the park down in that bottom right-hand corner. So that's the designated park area, and it's next to the green hatched, which could potentially be rezoned, either allowing commercial establishments or storage facilities. So the children would be accessing that park, going through potentially commercial businesses or storage facilities. Is that correct?
No, because that would be private property. I would expect that they would utilize the recreational trail, and then that would be tied into this park area. And then if along 4th Avenue, that's also the bike trail, I believe, is shown in the master trail plan to extend that way too. So I wouldn't expect them to be having to go through that, because there would be no connection potentially. Or if they stay with the R3 zoning, they would have that connectivity right there. So this is how they have it laid out if they would keep it at the R1c zoning. Sorry, excuse me, I said R3. So they have it laid out this way and are anticipating for the R1c. And so then you would see here that they would have access on Prairie Haven Drive.
I guess I'm just worried that should it become, as was mentioned, storage facilities or private property, the expectation that kids would use the bike trail when there's a more direct route to get there might be an unreasonable expectation.
So, and the idea actually that was suggested, I suggested that they do some mixed zoning, just because with the smaller lot sizes that they would have some opportunity for storage if that was a necessity, which I believe it is within the community. And then also just your little niche zoning of potentially retail opportunities or food establishments, things of that nature. So that was, but they have it planned for R1c, and if it were to change, and at the time of this phase, it would have to come back.
Yeah,
All right.
I think to that point, I think to kind of reiterate what Brandy said, I mean, right now, the proposal in front of us is an R1c zoning. It was just maybe a thought or a feather in the cap that, well, maybe we could do something else. But right now, I feel like what's in front of us is approving a concept plan with residential R1c zoning.
Well, I get that point, Mr. Chair, but when it's marked off like that in the green, it looks to me like it's more within the concept plan, even though it says it's the smaller lots. It is definitely marked off as something else, and it was definitely mentioned that it could be commercial or storage facilities, which I guess, I know we're just talking about the smaller lots now, but you can see that it looks to me like it's more than just a casual comment, and I wanted to bring up the idea that we need to be cognizant of safety for those kids. So I'm glad to hear that should that be changed somewhere in the future, it would come back before the board. That was what I needed to hear.
Yes, and I apologize, Diana. I did kind of hit on that as if it were being zoned that. I should have been more specific on that it is, everything is proposed to be R1c at this point.
Thank you.
Brandy, just a point of clarity though, they'll only be zoning this on a per phase basis, correct?
Right.
So if and when we get to that phase in the future, what I was going to recommend is keeping that concern in mind when we get to this phase of that development in the future. We'll want to make sure if it is coming in as C2, for example, we'd want to make sure they're preserving some kind of connectivity there for that park access.
Yes.
But that would be done when that phase is zoned, is the point I wanted to make.
Yes, good point, Heath. Thank you.
Yes, and really good point, Diana. Is there any other comments or questions from any board members?
I'll make one just to follow up with that. I think when phase, took my glasses off, when phase 6 comes in, and with the potential of phase 7 being commercial, it's only fair at phase 6 that this is addressed, because those people are buying residential lots that may squeal, just like we had on 81 when we changed that to commercial. When they're thinking it's all residential and all of a sudden we have commercial. So just something else for the minutes.
Yes, good point. It's always good to have the history.
Yeah, and then, you know, if when we get to phase 7, if they are thinking commercial, maybe they could flip-flop where the park is, and then there'd be residential, park, and then commercial. Just a thought. I mean, that's a ways out, but that's just a thought too. But we have some time before we get to phase 7. So. I see the applicants at the bench. Would they? I did close the public hearing, but if there's something you would like to add, okay.
No, that's fine. I'm Steve Thorson, and I was just going to comment, when we went through the Park and Rec, we actually picked up about an extra acre. So we're looking at those in the green section there to the right on the east side near the park. Our actual plans are currently R1c, and when we had to buy the dollars back, you know, or the land back, we are looking at, we could add another 4 lots right next to those. So we would anticipate that that's going to be more R1c than commercial. And frankly, I don't think that, and I apologize, Brandy, but we don't really think that storage is the proper area for that right there. I don't think so. It's going to be a wonderful looking development, and I don't really think we want to see storage sheds there. I'm just saying.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Are there any other comments from the board? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Brandy?
All right. Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Motion carries. 7th item on the agenda is open public comment. Brandy, did we receive anything?
No, we did not.
Okay, moving on in the agenda. Item 8 is new business. Is there any new business?
No, other than if you just want to support your fellow board member, Todd Kays. They are having their 50-year anniversary celebration this evening from 5 to 7, a social and picnic up at First District's new location on 18th Avenue. So if anybody wants to attend that, I think it's open to the public, so. And if not, it kind of is now.
Thanks, Brandy. Item 9, is there any old business?
None that I have.
Any reason to go into executive session?
No.
All right, then we are adjourned.
All right, thanks everyone. Have